Although the Speccy was launched in 1982 and the name sold in 1985, the machine still managed to stay in production for 10 years, albeit under several makeovers and revisions. Here is the lineup. First, we have the original Spectrum 16K and 48K models. The original and most familiar design of the Spectrum. It's a rectangular, small-shaped oddity. I say oddity because at the time, no other computer looked anything like it. Clive Sinclair was a keen advocate of elegant technology, and the Spectrum undoubtedly fitted into that bracket. Featuring a rubberized keyboard, which was generally disliked by most, a space bar, which is more like a button, and it's only accessible if you have a thumb protruding from the wrong side of your right hand. And also incorporating the now familiar Spectrum colour slash along the bottom right of the casing. It was indeed an object to behold. No! No! Owners of the 16KB model could purchase a 32KB RAM upgrade available as a daughter board on the first iterations, or the replacement of a few RAM and TTL chips on later versions, both of which meant you probably had to mail your machine off to be upgraded. Hence why most people opted for the 48KB model from day one, even though 32KB RAM packs, which simply plugged into the back, were indeed available from third parties. I guess Sinclair was just being awkward by not offering the option themselves. Later versions of the 48KB model actually contained 64KB of memory, but only 48K was made available. The main reason for this was to circumvent the strange tax that Spain instated for computers with less than 64KB of memory. Plus, as memory prices had started to drop significantly, the price difference in installation was negligible. As with later models, the machine featured an ear and mic socket for general external tape players, along with power supply input and an expansion port bus. Next, we have the Spectrum Plus. This model featured a complete case redesign, including an improved keyboard which was almost as usable as the one I'm typing this script out on. Released in October 1984, this machine looked much more like a computer and frankly better in my opinion. The Plus came with a brand new advertising campaign, a higher price tag at £179.95 and, wait for it, yes, a reset button. Whoa! You could also buy a conversion kit to bring your old Speccy up to scratch, as technically the machines were identical. However, a failure rate of up to 30% was soon reported, which was significantly higher than the original 6%. So although in early sales it outstripped the original, toy-looking thing, this declined quite rapidly, leading to surplus stock. Following on from this, we have the best incarnation of the Speccy, the Spectrum Plus 128K. Oh yes, my favourite iteration by a country mile, and for good reason. Codenamed Derby in conjunction with their Spanish distributor, Vestronica, who were brought on board to get around another Spanish law requiring all machines to have Spanish alphabet support and display messages in the appropriate language, the machines also shipped with the numeric keypad as a standard part of the package, something which was decidedly lacking over here in the UK boxes. The machine was showcased at the Simo 85 trade show in Spain during September 1985, with a price of 44,250 pesetas, but due to the number of unsold Spectrum Plus models, Sinclair decided not to start selling in the UK until January 1986 at a price of £179.95, the same as the Plus had been. Looks-wise, the machine is almost identical to the Plus, with the addition of a warping heatsink on the right-hand side, the slatted appearance paving way for this particular machine's nickname, the Toast Rack. It was to cool the 7805 voltage regulator and replaced the internal heatsink on earlier models, although why it was that size is mystifying. As I love this one so much, let's open her up and expose her beautiful components. As the name rightly dictates, the model had a whopping 128KB of RAM as standard, but also incorporated an AY38912 sound chip similar to the one found in the Atari ST, which also produced sound directly through your television, so the previous need for an inbuilt speaker was gone. Also, the machine had MIDI capability, an RS-232 serial port, an RGB monitor port, 32 kilobytes of ROM, which was up from 20 kilobytes in earlier models, and included an improved basic editor, which did away with all the shortcut key commands. The Z80 processor used in the Spectrum has a 16-bit address bus, which meant only 64 kilobytes of memory could be directly addressed. To enable the extra 80 kilobytes of RAM, Sinclair designers used bank switching so that the new memory would be available as 8 pages of 16 kilobytes on top of the address space. The same technique was also used to page between the new 16 kilobytes editor ROM and the original 16 kilobyte basic ROM at the bottom of the address space. Other tech specs include the Zilog Z80 CPU, clocked at 3.5469 MHz, text modes of 32 by 24 characters, graphic modes of 256 by 192 pixels, which was quite high resolution at the time, 8 colours with 2 tones each, normal and bright, 3 sound channels with 7 octaves, and I have to say, absolutely perfect physical dimensions of 320 by 150 by 45mm. The machine was also the first to feature the built-in graphical menu on boot, allowing for a much more refined user experience. Sadly, this and the QL, which is a story for another day, were the last releases for Sinclair before Amstrad bought the name and resale rights, which brings us onto the first of the Amstrad-made machines, the Spectrum Plus 2. And from the off, you can certainly tell it's from Amstrad. To begin with, the case has been redesigned completely, incorporating a more professional keyboard, which does away with the clutter of shortcut commands we've come to know and love on the Sinclair models, a built-in tape deck, data recorder, similar to Amstrad's own CPC models, allowing it to fall under the ethos of an easy-to-use computer, which Amstrad had been so successful at marketing. There were also 2 changes to the ROM. The first was the removal of the tape test feature from the 128 menu screen. This was deemed unnecessary as the data recorder was set up for optimal use. The second change was to replace the Sinclair copyright message with that of an Amstrad one. All good, you might say. After all, Mr. Sugar is known for his desire to preserve his brand and slap his name across all he sees fit. However, this did lead to some issues with the odd piece of software, namely the pieces of software which relied on poking certain points of ROM and relying on the data bed to be consistent. Because the Amstrad message changed this ROM character placement slightly, this meant that those programs just bombed out. Fortunately, they were in the minority. The good news was that the retail price also dropped to £149, following from Amstrad's cost-cutting and marketing measures. So, next we have the Plus 2A and Plus 2B. With the A model launching in 1987, these slightly altered units of the Plus 2 were essentially retrograded Plus 3s. Even the option for the Plus 3 Basic is retained in the menu. The first noticeable difference is the darkening of the case, which, IMO, looks a lot better, especially when shipped with the James Bond package. The reliability of these models is also slightly higher than the Plus 2 due to the underlying hardware and component changes, especially when it came to the reliability of the tape deck. The Plus 3 motherboard was designed so it could function without the floppy disk controller logic, replaced instead with the data recorder, and the Plus 2B had some slight component streamlining after the manufacturing operation moved from Hong Kong to Taiwan. You're fired. These models also feature a tape sound port on the rear. However, this is purely to provide output for the onboard sound chip. It's a welcome function, but not ideal if you're looking to use an external tape deck in the event of data recorder failure, for example. Or if today you were looking to load WAV files in. Very short-sighted, Amstrad. Happily, these models can be hacked to make use of the Plus 3's tape input functionality, although you'll need a soldering iron and a steady hand. Amstrad had advertised an external floppy drive ability for these models, however the accessory was never released, and maybe that was just because they thought the next model was more than enough, and that was the Plus 3. The final machine in the Spectrum lineup does away with the data recorder, instead replaced with a 3-inch floppy drive as seen on the Amstrad 6128. Again, it was launched in the latter part of 1987 and retailed for £249 before a swift reduction to £199. It was the only Spectrum capable of CP/M operating system compatibility. The machine featured a number of design changes over earlier models and lacked some of the compatibility contingencies built into the Plus 2A and B. 2 more 16KB ROMs were added to house the disk operating systems, and the bank switching features were altered, allowing more ROM to be paged out. Additionally, the expansion bus was shortened, which caused some input-output software issues, and this ultimately meant that more of the Spectrum back catalogue was unusable. Production of the Plus 3 ended in 1990, so it didn't compete with Amstrad's own CPC range. However, the Plus 2B model continued as it was not deemed as a competitor to their current hardware. There was also a Plus 3B, which did away with the data coder circuitry altogether. Power supplies for all the machine iterations are your usual brick type affairs. However, the Plus 2 A and B models had different DIN connectors and branding across the variations. There were also some known issues with the original Sinclair power supplies in 1983. It was declared that up to 14,000 of them could cause electric shocks, a figure later updated to 28,000 by Your Computer magazine. The fault was down to the 240V input track on the power pack circuit board running far too close to the 6V output, meaning that a power spike in humid weather could cause an electric shock. Sinclair's managing director Nigel Searle, who was also featured in Micromen, admitted that the supplies, which were limited to just one batch, were not checked in detail for safety. Amazingly though, Sinclair managed to turn around replacement units in 48 hours, which given their track record for delivery was absolutely mind-blowing. There was also a massive market of Sinclair clones, including the licensed Timex machine available in the States, marketed as the Timex Sinclair 2068 of all things. It had improved sound and graphic capability, but unfortunately it meant that the Spectrum's absolutely massive back catalogue was largely incompatible. I mean, the more I hear stories like this, the more I am absolutely dumbfounded at the marketing naivety back in the 80s. When will they learn? It's all about the software! Interestingly, some of the upgrades in the Timex systems were used by Sir Clive in the later released Cambridge Z88 portable computer. There were also many Russian clones and a few Spanish iterations, all based on the Spectrum hardware. And of course, more recently we have machines like the Vega, posed for production. Good grief, whatever next? Thank you for watching part 2 of my Sinclair Spectrum review and narrative. You can catch part 1 using the icon below, and part 3 should be ready for you next week, I hope. Thanks again, goodbye.